There's someone living in the Chicago area this weekend who has a challenge, a dilemma. They won Mega Millions. They're now sitting on $1.3 billion. Stop and think about that, $1.3 billion. Now, if they take the cash option, they're only going to see about 700 to 800 million. And then Uncle Sam's going to come along and say, hey, we want at least 150, maybe 200 of that. So now they're down to about maybe 5 or 6 million. Million. 5 or 600 million dollars. First of all, they're going to discover all sorts of friends and relatives. In the past, it would come in a letter. Now it comes with emails, Facebook friends. But what are they going to do with all that? Well, they might think, I always wanted to have a condominium overlooking Lake Michigan so that I could watch my boat on the lake, sit out there and enjoy cruising on the lake. All the stuff that they can buy. Just think of that, all the stuff that they can buy. Some of you know I love to do routines on the storage sheds. You know how there used to be these things sort of there, metal sheds sitting out there. Now we have climate-controlled storage. We have not only storage, we have climate-controlled storage. We all like stuff. I know I like stuff. When I moved here 6 years ago, I went through my stuff that I'd accumulated over 20 years, got rid of it. Now guess what? I got new stuff. But I think the question is, and the question that is raised in the first reading and the gospel reading, do I have the right stuff? Do I have the right stuff? Do I gather things that really allow me to grow in my life, to be closer to the Lord? That's the right stuff that we need to gather. There's a lot of different ways of doing that. Matthew Kelly, in his book, The 4 Signs of Dynamic Catholics, offers 4 different ways for us to really become dynamic Catholics: through prayer, study, generosity, and evangelization. I would like to focus in on that first one, prayer. One of the great things about the Catholic Church is there's so many different ways of praying. And Kelly developed what he called the prayer process. Now, some people have compared it to St. Ignatius' examen. While it has some similarities, there's different because St. Ignatius, in his examen, was looking at an examination of conscience. Examination of conscience. Kelly, in his prayer process, looks at it much more from looking at my consciousness. My consciousness. What is happening in my life? Why is it happening? How is it happening? Who's involved in that? And so he talks about 7 different steps of that prayer process. Here's the first one. Gratitude. Begin by thanking God in a personal dialogue for whatever you are most grateful for today. A dialogue with God. What are the things I am grateful for? After this past week, I'm sure there's some people in the St. Louis area grateful for the fact it's not raining. It's not raining. The weather's been a little milder. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for that. Or let's think of a couple taking home their first child after having spent some time in a NICU unit. Simply to say, thank you, God. So many times we think of big things in terms of being grateful to God for. But so many times I think it's those small things that are so important. A sense of gratitude. Just to say, thank you, God, for the gift of this day. Something as simple as that. Thank you, God, for giving me another day of life. The second one is awareness. Revisit the times in the past 24 hours when you were or were not the best version of yourself. Talk to God about those situations and what do you learn from them. That awareness of things happening in my life, the good, the bad, how those things affect me, maybe affect others. And again, take time to talk with God about that. That dialogue. Remember last week's first reading? Abraham is having this dialogue with God. This dialogue with God is two friends about what's happening. That awareness. The third one is significant moment. Identify something you experienced today and explore with God what God might be trying to say to you through that event or person. Now, I don't know if every day we have a significant moment, but there are moments every day in our lives that in some way or another touch us, affect us. And again, having that dialogue with God about what is happening here, what's going on. Again, that consciousness. The fourth one is peace. Ask God to forgive you for any wrong you have committed against yourself, another person, or Him, and to fill you with a deep and abiding peace. Think of all the people walking around the face of the earth, weighted down, burdened by guilt. It's a heavy burden they carry. One of the great things in the Catholic Church is we have this sacrament of reconciliation. An opportunity to have that burden lifted from us. And I can tell you, after 52 years of being a priest, I've experienced people having that burden lifted. Having that incredible sense of peace, of being at one with God again, especially after being separated from God for multiple years. The fifth one is freedom. Speak with God about how He is inviting you to a change in your life so that you may experience the freedom to be the best version of yourself. Again, there's that thing that Kelly so often likes to push. Be the best version of yourself. And how God invites us to do that. How God invites us to a change in our life. And sometimes that change comes as a surprise. Other times that change comes after a lot of reflection and prayer. Again, notice how in that discernment process, God is there. The sixth one is others. Lift up to God anyone you feel called to pray for today, asking God to bless and guide them. Every day we're faced with all sorts of things happening in the world, and how we're called to be mindful of them. It might be someone, close to us, someone who's been diagnosed with cancer, someone who's going through a troubling time in their life, someone who asks us to pray for them. But I think we need to widen that sense of others. Think of the people in eastern Kentucky. We complained about a couple of days of rain. They're talking about rain that continues. Lives lost. Houses floating away. We need to be mindful of them. Certainly, we've been doing a lot of praying for the people of Ukraine. Again, as they experience war in their midst. And on and on. But let's stop and think about that. We've had a lot of water here. You stop and realize there are hundreds of thousands of people each day who need to walk 3 miles to get fresh water. To get fresh water. Every day, walk 3 miles to get water. What about the people starving, the little children starving because of lack of food? We're called to be mindful of those others and expand our little circle. Expand our little circle of who those others are. The last step of Kelly's process is to pray the Our Father. Last week we had Jesus teaching his disciples that prayer. It's a simple prayer, but when you unpack it, it has incredible depth to it. Incredible meaning. Just when we say those first 2 words, Our Father. Who's included in that R? It's not my Father, it's our Father. How many people on the face of the planet Earth dare to say, Our Father? The billions of people who say that. And it goes on. The Our Father is the type of prayer that I think we need to do more than simply say those words. We really need to parse them, to allow them to sink in, to speak to us of our consciousness of God in our lives.